This is Excel 2016, Module 8, Part 2. We're looking at some of the advanced functions, and with this one, we are going to combine the AND function with the IF function. You may see this referred to as the equals if and. You could also have it referred to as the if nested with the and, or the and nested with the if. The key difference here is that with the and function, you have more than one decision. We will have two in our example, but you could have more than that. And these decisions or tests have to be combined in such a way that if all the tests are true, then the entire if statement is true. If any test is false, then the if statement is considered false. If you try to type these in manually, you need to study this format because you need to know where to put the parentheses and also where to put the commas. Let's look at our example in a diagram. So in our diagram, you can see that we have two decisions or tests in our logical test. So the first one is going to look at the years of service, and if that is greater than or equal to 2, then we're also going to look at the job status, and that has to be equal to PT or part-time. Notice PT is a text value, so it has to be in quotes. If both tests are true, then our response to our if statement is true. If that is the case, we're going to come down the yes side or the true, and we're going to type the value of yes. Again, since this is text, it must be in quotes. If either of these tests are not true, then we're going to go down the no side, and we're going to go down and put a blank cell as the answer. So let's take a look in our workbook how we can make this work. So we're going to create a new column. This one is going to say eligible for comp days. So you should be in the MBHC workbook, and you should be on the employee data worksheet. Your active cell should be L1, and we're going to type in the heading eligible for comp day. Now remember, when we enter these formulas, you always want to click on the cells in the same row. You will see the structured references being included in the formulas. So we're going to start out on our formula tab under logical, and we're going to choose an if statement. Now the very first thing you have to do in your logical test is tell it that we are doing an AND. So you're going to start the and open a parentheses. Now you're going to put in your two decisions, or however many you have, and they must be separated by commas. So our first one we said was going to be that the years of service is greater than or equal to 2. Put a comma in, and then you're going to click on the job status and say that has to be equal to, in quotes, PT. Close the quotes. Now, because we opened a parenthesis after the word and, if you open a parenthesis inside a box on these function arguments, you have to close it. Think of it just like if you were writing a paper. If you open a parenthesis, you have to close it. Our value, if true, is going to be yes. And again, that's text, so it must be in quotes. YES. And our value, if false, is going to be a blank cell. So we're going to do 2 quotes with nothing in between. Since all of the references are structured references, what that means is it's always going to look in, for example, the job status column in the row that the formula is in. So you do not need to change any referencing. Click OK. And you can see here, this person has more than two, plus part-time, so his said yes. This person had more than 2, but he was full-time, so his said no, because both criteria have to be true. Let's scroll on down the data a little bit further. Let's see. If we had someone who was part-time and their years of service were less than 2, it would also be blank. But as I scrolled down, it appeared to me that most of our part-time, or if not all of them, have greater than or equal to 2. But again, both criteria must be true in order for the entire response to be true. So if you look at the format after we accepted it, it starts out with an if and, opens the parenthesis and separates our criteria by commas, and then closes that parenthesis. Then we have another comma, and we start doing the value of true and value of false. It's much harder to type these formulas in than to use your mouse and the function argument boxes to enter them. So I encourage you to work on that. Now I want to continue this, and I'm going to do an if or. So an if or is basically the same as an if and. The only difference is the way that the tests get combined. With an or combination, if any test is true, then the entire statement is true. If all of the tests are false, then the statement is false. So you only need one test to be true in this case. Okay, so we're going to assume for this example, and they talk about this in the text, but they don't actually do it. We're going to be looking at the stores that the employees are working for. If the employee is either at the Bonham store or the Graham store, if either one of those is true, then it's going to go down the true path, and we are going to take their current salary and multiply it by 3.5% in order to calculate the salary increase. If neither of those are true, if they are both false, then we're going to go down this false avenue, and we're going to calculate their increase as 2.5%. So let's go ahead and come back into our MBHC, and we're going to say salary increase as our column heading. Now what we're going to do is we're going to start an if statement. So we're going to go to logical and if. And I'm going to type or as the very first thing in that box and open a parentheses. Now you're going to remember later you have to close it in that same box. So we're going to say if the store is equal to, and in quotes, we're going to put BONHAM. That's our first test, and then a comma. And then our second test is the store. Now notice I don't go searching for a cell that has the store value I'm looking at. I always click in the same row. So my other condition is the store is equal to, and in quotes, because it's text, GRAHAM, close the quotes, and close the parentheses. Now we said if one of those stores is true, if either one, we're going to take their current salary and multiply it by 0.035 for 3.5%. Then I'm going to go down to the false, and I'm going to say if it's not true, take the current salary and multiply it by 0.025. And I will click OK. And it will calculate an increase in pay. Now let's take a look at some algebra. So if I want to calculate not their salary increase, but I want to calculate the new salary. So to calculate the new salary, I could say that is equal to the current salary plus the salary increase. Now, if you remember the formula that we calculated, to calculate the increase, that could be the current salary plus, we took the current salary and multiplied it by 8%. So we're going to use that information and come up with how to calculate. So if we use the example for this percent as 0.035 for 3.5%, algebra will allow us to take the current salary and multiply that by 1 to get this first current salary, and then 0.035 of the second to get that. And that will all give us the same answer. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go back into our workbook here, and we're going to look at a couple of different ways that we can do that. So if I wanted to calculate new salary by addition, I could simply create a formula that would say it is equal to this current salary that I started with plus the salary increase that I already computed. And it gives us a new one. So we're going to go ahead and format both of these as accounting with 0 decimal places. Oh, maybe not. Didn't format them as accounting. Hold on a second. So we're going to choose accounting and decrease the decimals so that we now have round numbers. And then let's go ahead and assume that instead of trying to calculate the new salary, we're going to calculate it instead of calculating the salary increase with our if statement, we're going to do the new salary with if or. And I'm going to take the format painter and paint the formatting into there. All right, so let's start our if statement. Formulas, logical, if. My decisions don't change. Or, open the parentheses. The store is equal to, in quotes, Bonham, close quotes, separate the decisions with a comma. Then say the store is equal to, in quotes, Graham, Graham, close quotes, close the parentheses. Go down to the value if true. So I'll show you two different ways that you could do this, and either one would technically be correct. So I could start out and I could say their new salary is equal to the current salary plus, then put in a parenthesis and say the current salary times 0.035. And then again, since I opened a parenthesis, I would have to close it. If you're good at algebra, you could also state it as the current salary times, and in this example, the false value was 2.5%, so it would be 1.025. And then say OK. So make sure you can translate some of these things and using either here where we calculated just the increase, versus here, if we are asked to calculate the salary, you can't forget to add the original salary back into that value. If we were asked to calculate the new salary, and you told me that this individual's new salary was $3,710, that person is not going to be very happy with that as their new salary amount. Okay, they want their new salary to be higher than their original. So you always want to look at your answers. If you were asked to calculate a new salary and this was your answer, you should immediately know that that answer is wrong. You've missed something because it's so low compared to what their current salary was. So that covers the if and also the if or. And again, the key difference between these two functions is how we combine the tests or the decisions. So for example, if you're looking at the if and, then all, let's go back to that, the if and, all tests must be true for the if statement to be considered true. If any test is false, then the entire if statement is false. If we look at the if or, if any test is true, our if statement is true. And all tests must be false for the if statement to be false. So make sure you review both of those. You will definitely see one of these two formulas on your case exam.